Welcome to the American Mandate. I'm Grady.
And I'm Camden. Top of the show today. All we have talked about and what we wanted from our government is transparency. We want them to actually feel like they have values. And no matter who it is, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, whatever, I just want to know what's going on in our government. And I don't I'm tired of just all this smoke and mirrors, this hidden stuff. And so, well, I'm kind of upset today with Pam Bondi. Florida Representative Anna Pauline Luna, sorry if I butchered your name, stated on X on February 11th and February 19th, House Oversight Committee sent a letter to the DOJ asking for status on the releasing of the Epstein files, as well as JFK, etc. The DOJ has not responded, so now she's reaching out on X because it can't seem to get a response from the AG, being Pam Bondi. These documents have been on Pam Bondi's desk for a while, and I'm a little frustrated, and I'm very worried that there actually is something that's harmful to the administration. And Donald Trump kind of putting out saying that there's nothing harmful to the administration was kind of just a political boost thing. I don't think so, to be honest, but I am a little bit frustrated that Pam Bondi's just not being transparent and giving us all these files.
I agree. I think it's really bad optics for them to just sit there and claim that they're a transparent administration and then let the Epstein files sit on her desk all weekend and have one of our congressional members requesting documents.
Just a response.
And she's completely ignored that request. And now she's on X. That looks really bad on this administration. Yeah, I agree completely.
The Republican Party, the whole joke, and I think we'll get into Thomas Massie in a bit, but kind of the joke that's been going around on his page is that, oh, don't worry, everything will be better once we have a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican executive branch. So far, it seems like there's way more infighting, and now in the presidency, there's not really transparency, and we're talking about all these files and nothing has been released. And now we have this whole thing from Michael Schellenberg, so coming from him, FBI whistleblower Garrett Boyle confirmed to me that a source inside FBI said FBI employees were destroying evidence on servers and that he informed Kash Patel. Garrett Boyle is a indefinitely suspended FBI agent, former police officer, and veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, per his own personal bio. CNN Politics also continued saying has stated on the CIA's 7th floor, home to the top leadership, some officers are also quietly discussing how mass firings and the buyouts already offered to staff risk creating a group of disgruntled former employees who might be motivated to take what they know to foreign intelligence service. I mean, this is just a load of crap. This is the whole reason we sent Kash Patel in, to take over, fire people that needs to be fired, and rid out all of these. You can call them warmongers, you can call them establishment types, you can call whatever you want to call them.
They're bureaucrats.
And I know Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino hasn't even gotten in yet, right? And Kash Patel
does he need to go through the Senate confirmation process?
No, because he's a deputy, as far as I know.
Yeah, but they're confirming a lot of deputies right now in Congress. So is it
maybe
different with him?
I thought it was different than him, but I mean, I don't quote me
that
on
might
that.
That might be a tough battle to get him through.
I don't. If we got Kash Patel through, I think Dan Bongino is going to go through.
I'm sure he'd make it, but the Democrats would be up in a fuss about it again. Probably delay it.
Yeah. Point being is that I understand Kash Patel has just gotten in. And now he's randomly the ATF director acting too.
I hope they dissolve that entire agency, man. That'd be great.
The problem with dissolving that entire agency,
or at least fold it into the FBI completely.
Yeah. The ATF it has some uses, and it's
more
being
harm
used
than good, though.
No, I 100% agree. I don't want the ATF to exist. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like with the education department. If you take something over or you get rid of something, someone else is going to take the bulk of what's going on there, and whether that's good or bad. That's what kind of they talked about with the education department. It's going to be spread out to because what the education department does is it gives out funds federally to all these programs throughout the states. That's its main function. And so if the Trump administration wants to keep those funded programs as they've claimed that they have, it's going to have to go to, like, whether it's the budget committees or like some other form in his cabinet. So that's kind of the where with the ATF, it's like, okay, so we're just going to dissolve into the FBI. Now we're giving the FBI more control. And I don't really want to do that because we're not going to have Kash Patel the rest of our life.
True. Do you think he will, let's say J.D. Vance is nominated, elected in 2028. Do you think because FBI director is a tenure of 7 years, do you think he'll carry over if Vance gets elected?
Yes, depending on, I mean, Kash Patel has been kind of this interesting figure where he doesn't have, like, the left is kind of right about, like, he has 2 months of relevant experience as far as, like, in the presidency goes. He's not like this, like, just thrown in, like, anyone else is like, oh, you have no experience. We've had those people in the presidency before.
He's been in the Department of Justice for a while.
He has as a public defender,
yeah.
And then he's kind of risen up. So I'm not undermining his qualifications, but he kind of is thrown into this, and then also some of his comments where he's been talking about the files and saying that you're asking the wrong questions. This is what's going on, but he hasn't really said anything like more than that, and it's like they're already declassified, like they're just going through the process right now. And so if he does a good job, I see him carrying over. I'm not exactly worried about that. I don't see it. I've kind of gone back and forth with this. I don't see a lot of the cabinet carrying over. I do think Rubio will make a run for it, no matter what.
I agree.
I don't think Vance is going to want Pam Bondi, just based on past rhetoric and the whole Second Amendment stuff, which we'll hopefully get into later. I don't like. I don't see maybe RFK will
He's
continue,
old,
but I don't know if RFK will do it unless like there's like he is like hasn't even gone close to what he needs to do as far as Health and Human Services. He won't even push for it.
There's a couple like lower level people, like maybe EPA. There's a possible, if he does a
Radcliffe
good
might
job.
continue.
Maybe Sean Duffy if he does a good job. It depends. There's some people that could carry over. I think some of the big names probably won't.
Yeah.
Maybe if Hegsteth does an outstanding job, maybe. It seems like him and Vance have a good friendship, so it's a possibility. Rubio won't.
No, I mean...
If anything, he'd get VP.
Best case scenario, though, everyone carries over. DeSantis gets the VP position.
Yeah,
and
that's best
we
case
continue.
Scenario. Well,
it's not the best.
There might be a couple people I'd want to switch out, but for the most part, yeah.
Well, I mean, like that's the general, like, feeling of it.
Had Matt Gaetz not diddled with a little girl, maybe he would have been a better AG.
No. No.
At least more. He probably would have been better about getting these files out. At least
he would have been better about the files, but that's such a minute detail. Matt Gaetz was the most like he had that was the definition of bare minimum. Like I didn't even know he had a law degree until all this stuff came up. Like that's how
funny.
little.
It is funny.
he was barely involved with that.
I kind of wish he had gotten through just to see all the controversial picks make it, but yeah, he wouldn't have done. He doesn't have the experience she does, but I think he's. I don't know. She worries me.
She worries me a lot, but the difference with Matt Gaetz is when he has decided to enact, like with the whole McCarthy bit, like that had everything to do with the committee documents that were coming out that were going to be against Matt Gaetz, and he decides, oh, I'm just going to go after McCarthy, and it started a frenzy in the Republican Party.
Yeah, that was a crazy time.
It worked. You can't say it worked out for better because McCarthy has been more conservative than Johnson. Like, I don't like McCarthy, but it's like that's a real thing that we brought up, and Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, but he was reaching across the aisle in ways that I disagree with, and yeah, I'm glad McCarthy was ousted. I don't exactly love the replacement, but I do think think Johnson is better than McCarthy.
What I will give Matt Gaetz credit for is he constantly did work across the aisle, even though he was the most controversial Republican. He worked with Democrats more than probably Republicans.
He worked with AOC, man.
Yeah, and so.
And he was the only other person in Congress that wasn't funded by AIPAC, by the way.
Yeah, that's
which is
true.
Nice.
So, but anyway, we're going this.
I don't know how we got to
Trump
Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, we moved way over, but with this Michael Schellenberg thing, we desperately need to have reform in these departments. I think that's what Elon Musk was getting at with trying to fire people. but he was, I would argue, going about it completely wrong way, which, as according of last night, Trump administration basically said, you don't have to respond to it. You're not going to get fired, which that's good. That's
Not
giving
all of them,
boundaries
but
to
many
Elon
of his
Musk.
departments. I think Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, they were both like, dude, we just got here. What are you doing? Like, let us look at our own department first before you just mass fire people.
Yeah.
Also,
exactly.
I think the email had nothing to do. Musk is not going. His guys aren't going to sit there and review thousands of emails. They're going to see who didn't send an email and be like, okay, is this person even looking at their email? Are they even working? I think that's what it was about.
Yeah, I mean,
but either way, it's overstepping. I didn't approve of it, and it makes sense that many of these departments are like, don't listen to this.
I mean,
now RFK, he just got there and he was like, absolutely respond to this email because he's got the largest workforce in the federal government. It makes sense.
And Elon Musk has done this stuff before. He did it when he came into X. He basically wrote out email, which basically was like an identity, like little, and like every email had a little bit different.
Yeah.
And he found out who was leaking stuff. So, which, like, Elon's done this stuff before, but he needs to be reeled in and understand that he's an advisor.
Right. I just feel like it's kind of not his responsibility to. Maybe I'm wrong, but Trump did say, I love what Musk is doing. I'd love for him to get more aggressive. And then the email thing happened right after that. So maybe it was just simply his response to Trump's kind of wishes.
Yeah, I mean,
if Trump ordered that email to be put out, then that kind of settles it. Then Trump's kind of an idiot.
Yeah, but the difference
he didn't communicate with his cabinet.
Trump clearly didn't send that email out. What I've noticed with Trump, and this was an issue with his first term, is that he really trusted the people around him. And this time, like, take it, they're good people.
Much better, yeah.
They're a lot better people, but he trusts that they're going to fill out what he wants to do. And he's like, oh, this sounds like a good policy. Go forward with it. Push forward with it. And oftentimes you get stuff like IVF.
Yeah.
Or you get...
Like I said, I don't think he knows anything about that at all.
No,
I don't think he knows
doesn't.
anything about IVF.
Which makes it worse.
Right, exactly. Nobody's informed him. Like, hey, you're kind of taking the pro-life stance. Why are you pushing this forward?
Yeah.
Because to him, it's just like, oh, it's just helping people have babies. But he doesn't know anything about it.
I'm sorry, you cannot be like he's claiming to be like this Christian president now, this pro-life president. You can't be either of those if you support IVF.
Right.
Which honestly, most
Did you see
people,
Michael Knowles try to defend that on his show? He was like, well, he probably doesn't.
I didn't.
Like, he was like, he clearly doesn't like IVF, but on the show he said something along the lines of like, Trump basically, what the hell did he say? Now I'm drawing a blank. He's like, oh yeah, he's just expanding access, but it's like, dude, that's really bad.
It's more than expanding access. It is
making it more
lowering
affordable.
the cost and making it more affordable. Michael Knowles has been like, I don't know how we're gonna get on Michael Knowles, but the issue that I have with him is sometimes he is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna jab the left, and like he's really good at arguments when it's like 80-20 issues.
Right.
Like when his surrounded thing. But when it comes to like defending Catholicism, he really defends the Pope. When it comes to defending Trump, he like it seems like he'll sacrifice his own beliefs.
He'll bend over backwards to find the rationale to defend Trump. I don't understand
just
it.
call him out.
Listen, I don't like Ben Shapiro at all, but Shapiro is a staunch critic of Trump when it comes to it, and I appreciate that. I don't like what Ben Shapiro has to say a lot of the time, but there's a lot of the time where I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Nobody else at the Daily Wire is willing to.
Being critical of your own side only is a benefit to your own side, because then you're actually giving good arguments of being like, no, these are the actual issues that we have.
Some of the things he critiques Trump for are just stupid. A lot of the time that Ben Shapiro says, I don't agree with a lot of what Ben Shapiro says, but just having the notion of critiquing, being willing to critique your own side, like Charlie Kirk would never do that. But Charlie Kirk is an activist. That's kind of what comes with it. And Charlie Kirk it's his job to just propel and fuel the MAGA movement. And I kind of respect it, but he's not like meant to be taken as like sort of a bipartisan figure.
And this is kind of what I was talking about with yesterday. It was more about the Democrats' side of living in their own echo chamber. Since Trump... they
live in a different universe.
Yeah. No, it's not a different universe. It's just flat out lying.
Yeah.
Like, it's an echo chamber.
Their followers do. You go on Reddit. I'll go on Reddit and I'll open like... it'll be like recommended community, and I'll open it up, and it's like a leftist community, and the shit that they're saying, it's like, dude, where are you living? Like, what?
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, because they just listen. They listen to Joy Reid. They listen to
I miss you, Joy.
Jen Psaki. They listen to Rachel
Dude, they
Maddow.
should get Joy Reid on The View.
No.
Yes.
No.
Get her on The View, man.
No, get her on The View and then put Ben Shapiro on there with her.
That'd be good.
But I don't understand what the right is doing in this scenario, because any controversial thing that Trump has done, like Charlie Kirk does not like say anything in regards to it. And so I've like stopped listening to him and stopped listening to most of the right people.
He's the guy that you watch on election night when you really want your side to win, because he's going to chase all the ballots.
100%.
He's the, like when you want your side, when you're 100% in, he's the guy you want to listen to.
The thing is that most of these guys are really knowledgeable.
When your guy is now in, that's when you need to start looking at it through a critique lens.
Like there are facts that people that Charlie Kirk, that Michael Knowles have, that they've just done so much research and read so many books that they know way more than and they're very smart.
But they're ignoring the bad things.
And that's the problem.
Or they'll address them and rationalize them in a way that's just like,
you can have all the knowledge in the world, and if you're not willing to actually critique with that knowledge, your knowledge is useless.
And I feel like Megyn Kelly and Tucker are kind of swaying in that direction, and it bothers me. I appreciate Megyn. I do think she's an activist, but I do think she's a good journalist. So, and I think Tucker's a great journalist, undeniably so. But as an interviewer, he kind of bothers me. And you can disagree with some of his stances. But who cares? But it seems like they're kind of moving in the Trump glazing direction, and it just bothers me.
Well, I mean, the thing with Tucker
I love Tucker. Don't get me wrong.
The issue Tucker has is also his benefit, which is he gives a platform to anybody who would not have gotten a platform.
He's almost like a Joe Rogan of the complete right, which you watch his interviews and they're all very interesting, but you can't take everything they say as fact.
But here's the difference with like Tucker Carlson and say Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan will be like, hey, we found out everything this guy said is wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to take out the podcast. Like that Tucker Carlson won't do that. He'll just nod and be like, oh, okay. And like, you guys decide. Yeah. That's his case. And it's interesting. And then there's like Joe Rogan, we're just like, we'll fact check you on the spot. It's like, oh no, this doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, Joe's great. I was watching, it was like right before election day in 2020, and it was Tim Dillon and Alex Jones and Joe Rogan. And it's such a good interview because he was like, every 10 seconds, he's like, hold on, Alex, Jamie, look that up.
Yeah. I mean, what you need to do with Alex Jones. I mean, like, Alex Jones has predicted stuff, like, well into the future.
It's funny because all the stuff they looked up was right.
But if you throw 100 darts at the wall, probably one of them will hit.
Yeah.
Alex Jones, for some reason, just hits 10 of them sometimes.
Yeah. As you can see with the Sandy Hook thing, I mean, it kind of...
yeah, we don't need to get into that. The House budget.
Yeah. Thomas Massey's the man.
Thomas Massey, being one of like another 11 Republicans who are like has concerned of this, and I mean, take it. The 11 Republicans seem like they are willing to like vote for it if they have some reassurances. Thomas Massey's just a solid no.
He's a true conservative.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, is not willing to sway on his values.
This is what we were talking about yesterday, where like if you do all this stuff in savings with Doge. Great, you're gonna do great as far as the voters go, and that's been shown in history. I mean, look at Bill Clinton.
It's not even gonna make a dent on the deficit.
But it's not going to matter if you do the same thing you did in 2017 when you don't balance the budget and you just like said, oh, I just want to increase the debt ceiling by $4 trillion, like it says. Oh, we're going to, it's not increase our debt ceiling by $4 trillion.
Right.
But our debt, because our deficit is going to increase by $328 billion this year.
The first year of 295.
Next year, 295, and then following $242 billion. Like,
that's just stupidity.
We're $1.8 trillion in our deficit.
This isn't a budget to legitimately cut anything. It's a budget to like basically encourage cutting. Like start looking into cutting.
Like there is some.
None of that's going to happen.
There's some kind like it's. There is the things that they are cutting is $2 trillion to cut mandatory federal spending, which include Medicare, Medicaid, and Supplement Nutrition Assistance Program, which basically institutes 21% of the Agriculture Committee and 11% reduction over 10 years to Medicare.
That's not going to happen.
Even if so here's the two sides of the argument. The one side is our argument, which is like it's not going to happen. If it did happen, cool, I guess. The other side of the argument is that conservatives said we weren't going to touch these programs, and now they're backstabbing people and saying like, oh, we are going to touch these programs and we are going to cut it. Like,
somebody needs to have the balls and say, listen, Social Security's got to go.
Social Security needs to be like completely just overhauled, because I understand the place for it. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have paid into it for years. They should get their money, but we should not have to pay into this program anymore because it will not exist.
But it's more than that, because it's the only program on the face of the earth that, like, you're not, like, when you invest money, right, and you invest in your 401k, you're investing in different companies, and, like, over time it will increase because of S&P 500, all of that. I'm not going to say I'm giving tax or savings or any kind of advice, but when we're talking about Social Security, there were so many baby boomers that when they put money in, it was like pennies on the dollar. And now they're, because of inflation going up and everything like that, you're getting just an X-fold of
worst
money
generation,
back.
worst generation in American history, no doubt.
But like, you're getting so much money back that it's like it's borrowing from my kids' future. It's borrowing from my future. Like, I mean, I don't know how much is going to be around when my parents are there, and they're 15 years off from that. Like that,
it's just a bad concept, I think. I mean, if we never get it, then it's just social. I mean, it's in the name. Social Security is literally socialism. I don't approve of that. It's just a bad.
I don't want.
How about you handle your own retirement and keep your entire paycheck?
I'm not putting money, like, you can just change the program to make it so that you're investing in it, and you
right.
invest
If you were to
401ks.
invest your own money into an individual retirement account, forcefully, but if it was an individual account, not something that's pooled together, then it would be your money at the end of your. And also, remember when Rand Paul tried to raise the retirement age, and everybody's like, "Oh, you can't do that." It's like, okay, well, it's going to collapse then.
Yeah.
You have two choices, and they just ignored. And everybody voted against it.
There are better programs than Social Security. Putting into a 401k, putting into an IRA. There are better ways to save money. I understand the argument for Social Security, because some people are working right now 3 jobs just to provide for their kid, and they don't have the money to save for Social Security.
My father is fully retired, 65, and he's living off of it.
That does not mean that the program is good, though.
Right.
Just because the intentions are good and it helps a lot of people does not mean the program is good.
We are paying for the boomers right now.
Yes. And we will be for the sustainable future. Yes. Like, you and I, our
Until
entire lives will be paying for that. And then once we get there, they're like, oh, sorry, the well's dry.
Right.
And that's our issue. And that's what we talk about with this. All the spending stuff, as you said, like, all of it is just saying we have a commitment. Like, it says it in it. We will have a commitment to cutting this much. We will have a goal for cutting $2 trillion.
When conservatives say that, they mean we're not going to do a fucking thing.
But then, hey, at least they actually plan for $100 billion increase to military spending and $90 billion to homeland programs. Like, congratulations.
I thought we were ending war. Why are we putting more money into that?
I mean, I'm for adding more. Like, our defense budget encapsulates so much, and so. But the fact that it
needs to be cut.
My problem is putting money that we don't have in, and then saying we're going to cut things hypothetically. We're going to put 4.5 trillion. We're going to slash 4.5 trillion in taxes. That's my problem, because it's not going to happen. It's not law. It's basically like where Trump was doing all his executive orders and being like, oh, look at how much we've gotten done in 4 weeks. When you look at it, actually, it's like, I'm telling Pete Hegseth to look into the Iron Dome. I'm telling this person to do this thing, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. So that's kind of my issue with it. I do want to touch on. We talked a lot about the Russia-Ukraine war yesterday, and you and I have always had difference of opinion about, like, the logistics of it, like the nitty-gritty stuff.
My only point is that history did not start on February of 2022.
Agreed.
People act like it did.
No,
it was not an unprovoked invasion. It was not a moral invasion. Putin is 100% in the wrong, and I don't like Putin at all. But to act like that Ukraine had no hand, or U.S. had no hand, or NATO had no hand.
The United States created the circumstances for the war. Europe provoked the war. Russia started the war. Ukraine wants to continue the war until they get their demands in full. And then Europe is continuing to push this war forward and fund it and just keep it going along. The reason I bring this up is there is a little bit of a concern with Donald Trump's rhetoric here.
I agree.
Let me find the actual quote. There it is. So Trump is continuing to blame Ukraine for starting the war, and this continue bit for pushing, saying that Zelensky is a dictator. And, like, I'm sorry.
He's taking the wrong side of the argument.
He's taking the wrong side of the
argument. He shouldn't be taking any side. It's a negotiation.
But the problem is that we are taking a side. I mean, This is according to the Washington Post. The United States voted with Russia, North Korea, Iran, and 14 other what is being labeled Moscow-friendly countries on Monday against a UN resolution condemning Russian aggression in Ukraine and calling for the return of Ukrainian territory. The resolution, sponsored by representatives of Kyiv, passed overwhelmingly in the UN General Assembly. The U.S. delegation also abstained from voting on its competing resolution that simply called for an end to the war, after European-sponsored amendments inserting new anti-Russian language in the resolution were approved in a 193-member body by a wide margin. The amended U.S. resolution also passed. The problem is they should have abstained from both. You don't go into negotiations with Russia and then go to the UN and sign something that says anti-Russian. But you don't side with Russia, Iran, North Korea on the UN stage. Also, why are all Iran in the UN to begin with? Please explain that one to me.
Agreed.
But why are you that's a public thing that you are siding with the Moscow friendly in 14 countries. Just abstain from that vote like you did the latter half. I agree. Don't sign the thing that has anti-Russian language in it because that ruins your negotiations.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But
I agree.
All this looks together, calling Zelensky a dictator, abstaining from your own package because it's anti-Russian, and then siding with North Korea and Russia in the other negotiations. That's just creating that you are a pro-Russian president, not a pro-peace president. Those are two different things. And so, I don't know.
I get it. I get where he's coming from, but it's just terrible optics. It's terrible negotiation. I get he wants to completely heal his relationship with Russia. I understand the need to do that, but what he's doing is completely abandoning one side, which are his allies, not Ukraine, but the European Union.
Yeah,
and I just don't understand that. He's negotiating.
He's negotiating,
and he's negotiating in a terrible way. I trust him to end the war. Don't get me wrong. I think he will, but it's just terrible optics.
And that's been the history of that. That's what been Donald Trump's presidency so far.
Yes.
Is that making some good moves. I can see where he's going with things. His optics are terrible, and that's what we're running into.
We're gonna own the Gaza Strip. What?
I mean, that's kind of the other thing with So a judge blocked ICE enforcement actions at churches. This is coming from USA Today. U.S. District Judge Theodore Chain found that Trump administration policy could violate their religious freedom and should be blocked while a lawsuit challenging it plays out. Basically, what the Trump administration wanted to do is they wanted to throw out Department of Homeland Security policies that limited where migrant arrests could happen. And basically, President Trump wanted to just say, yeah, go into the church and deport people. I'm siding with the judge on this one. Take it, I'm more religious freedom than most people, and I don't want churches to then become like a safe house, like a sanctuary city that people just walk into and then they harbor out there.
Do you think they should be allowed to wait outside?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course.
Right.
I wish that give them a head start. I'm not like that. I'm not pro you cross the border illegally. There are criminals out here also. So
here's the thing: the churches clearly aren't gonna ID people when they walk in, so they're not at fault for harboring anybody. It's just a house of worship. And yeah, I don't agree with Trump's idea to have them go in. That's too much.
It's interrupting.
It's a house of worship. You're interrupting prayer.
My whole thing with it, unless there is an emergency, unless someone's dying, I'm not with this belief that house of worship completely closed off, that if there's an issue, you can't enter there. If there's an issue, yeah, you can enter in there and deal with the issue. But after all this stuff with the FBI unjustly going after the Catholic Church, I feel like Donald Trump is making the wrong move here, just saying that, yeah, go in and deport people. There are plenty of people who are not in the house of worship that you can deport. That's our issue. So why are we making this policy?
I don't know. I do want to get back to Ukraine because I did make some notes on it.
Oh, okay.
I did a little bit of history digging, and this is just my interpretation of the true provocation. And so in February 9th of 1990, James Baker III, which was our Secretary of State at the time, promised Gorbachev that NATO would not spread east 1 inch of unless, basically saying if we won't spread east. Russia must agree to German unification. So that's
Right.
what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And they made that agreement. So Germany unified. And then in 1994, Clinton signed off on a plan to expand NATO. It began in 1999 with Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. Russia didn't much care about that because it wasn't a direct threat, but they were clearly moving east and breaking the agreement. And then the bombing of Serbia happened, which was basically the use of NATO to bomb a European capital, Belgrade, 78 straight days to break apart that country.
Mm-hmm.
That's when NATO became weaponized. And I think under the Bush administration, they walked away from some kind of deal with Russia that would have basically not inducted Russia into NATO, but really mended relations. And then after that, they ended up moving missiles. I believe under the Obama administration, I haven't done that much digging, but they basically brought missiles into Ukraine. And then they overthrew the government with the coup. Our State Department helped the coup in 2014, which is a democratically elected leader who was trying to have relations with Russia. They overthrew that government because they didn't like that. And then under the Trump administration, he sent them weapons. He armed all of them. This was all a very direct threat, and many people have compared it to the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't know. I think that's a bit far.
It is.
But there is a lot of comparisons to that. And I don't know, man. I just feel like I said, people act like history began in February of 2022, and that's just ridiculous.
The West hates Russia.
I don't approve of Russia invading, but this was to them a direct threat to their border, and they broke many promises. NATO became weaponized. They sent missiles in. They walked away from peace deals. They overthrew a government that was trying to work with them. They armed the fucking citizens. It was like everything that Russia told them not to do, they did. Now, they shouldn't have say over a sovereign nation, but this is a bordered country. So I'm just saying, you got to lay out the groundwork because people just ignore that.
No, they do. And again, we're not the problem when you say that kind of stuff, everyone just assumes, oh, you're pro-Russia now.
Right.
Like, no. I want to be as far away from that conflict as possible, even though we're just like a couple miles apart if you look at the
So had
the
Trump
map,
actually taken the middle ground on this issue and said we're negotiating, he could have said all this information and been like, this is why I'm not pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia. We're just simply trying to end the conflict. But
instead he's just taking Russian talking points.
He's just taking Russia's side. He's being Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson got all this information. He said, oh, Russia's the good guys. It's like, no, dude, no, you're not paying attention. Yes, Ukraine and NATO provocated this conflict, and Russia started it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my whole take on Ukraine.
Yeah, no, I get that, and Tucker Carlson really wanted to push forth this whole the narrative that Russia, why they went in, because there's Nazis there and we got to take over the territory to prevent the Nazi takeover, like
kind of goofy,
talking about like the history of the country being like, oh, this is our
where
country, it's where we started, we need to take this over. All that stuff is just
semantics. It doesn't matter.
It's not even semantics. It's lower than that. It's trying to justify your evil acts.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Putin is a dictator. Zelensky is not a dictator. But we have created Zelensky.
He's not a dictator, but he's clearly prolonging this war, and they haven't held elections in 2 years. And there's basically not martial law, but you know what I mean. There's emergency powers in place to keep him in power.
Yes.
Elections need to take place when these negotiations are
negotiations
finalized.
are done, and once the war
if
is
he
ended,
tries to stay in power, then you can say he's a
Zelensky
dictator.
has said openly that if the United States was to accept them into NATO, or if there was a ending to the war, he would personally step down.
Great, let's do it.
So
we're not bringing you to NATO though. Stop trying to negotiate that, dude. It's not going to happen.
There is a worry though with this whole that some people on the right has brought up with the whole mineral thing. Like I said, it was kind of the best case scenario that we take the minerals, then we have an interest there. The other side of that argument is, oh, we have an interest there. That means we want to put military there. And
that's the argument I made a couple weeks ago. This is like secretly bringing. It's like bringing them into NATO without bringing them into NATO, and it's going to be the same outcome, dude. Russia's not going to put up with that.
So the reason I'm
but if Russia agrees to it formally, then
that's what I'm saying is that like The agreement is more so that we're not involved in your politics. We're out of it completely. But we do have an interest there so that we're supporting Ukraine so Ukraine doesn't feel like they're just going to get invaded in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But there
it feels
needs,
like a good middle ground, but it's a good
for
point.
Ukraine minerals, though, this is what I also believe. I believe there needs to be an ending to it. So like a 10-year, 15-year contract, because then it's like, okay, we're out of the region completely in this period of time.
Also, like, we don't want to completely bankrupt their country.
No,
like, that's what makes them valuable, you know?
We won't bankrupt their country. Final point I want to get on, if we move on from the Ukraine thing. You and I have had the issue, like, a ton of misinformation that's gone online and media outlets jumping the gun on things. One of the most prominent things that has kind of happened recently is this whole thing with the Philadelphia Eagles. So people not involved with football, after the Super Bowl, when the two best teams win whoever wins that game, they get invited to the White House. Happens with pretty much every other sport. Philadelphia Eagles, to my knowledge, rejected it during Trump's first term because they were supposed to go then. So media outlets jumped the gun here, saying that Trump has invited the Eagles, and the Eagles decided we're not going to show up to that. Ian Rappaport, who's a national insider of the NFL Network, said the Eagles would be honored to visit the White House, team sources say. It's one of the aspects of winning they are excited about and look forward to receiving an invitation. This spread like wildfire. Megyn Kelly propagated this. I mean, I even posted on my page about it because like it was so many media outlets saying it, and also there was the history of it. Yeah. It was all false. The Eagles haven't even received an invitation yet. And
now Trump probably is like, oh, maybe I should invite them. Because it's like better optics to be like, hey, media's lying. I did invite them. They did show up. That's what he should do at this point, even if he had no intention of doing so before.
Yeah, he needs to now. But like, we're running to all these problems with like media outlets just consistently pushing narratives that they want to push, and this is just a blatant lie. Nothing has even happened. It wasn't even that President Trump invited them, and then some source in the Eagles said that they didn't want to do it, but then
actually, was it an old article that they brought up from the first administration, or is it just completely? No, it
was a completely made up.
Yeah, that's
100% made up. I mean, and there's that piece, and then there's the also side with
I'd be banning all these media outlets from the White House briefing.
We started with the AP. Let's go down the list.
Yeah, I'd be like, listen, this is just, you're trying to have blatantly lies to have bad optics for our administration. You're banned. You're banned. You're banned. You're banned. This isn't about free speech. This is about you just spreading complete misinformation.
I think this is the problem with X, is that like you and I ran into this problem when I forgot specifically what it was, but
we were doing digging on Trump's Agenda 47, and people kept sharing videos about Trump. You know, he made a bunch of videos on his website for his policies, and he basically, you know, people went on X and started taking those videos from like mid 2023, started posting them as if he just put them out after he won the election.
About Ron DeSanctimonious.
Yeah, and it was like right after the election, as if it was right after the election. People kept posting, "Oh, look at what Trump just said. Look at what Trump just said." It's like, I'm sure his policies are pretty much the same, but dude, it's been a year and a half. Stop acting like this just came out.
Or this is the one I was referencing, which was there was tweets going around everywhere that John Thune held Adam Schiff from being able to take committees and until he's been investigated. And you go and you run down the rabbit hole of where it goes, because it was spreading like wildfire, and you go all the way, and it's just some guy on Twitter that said this is what happened. There was no evidence for it whatsoever. And this is the issue, is that like there's
no sources on X.
No, there's no sources. And I think that's the issue, is that community notes can only go so far. And a lot of time the community notes is wrong. Elon Musk has admitted as much, as that there's different companies, different governments that are saying. Because it's a matter of public
opinion, right? Because somebody will make a claim, and then a bunch of people basically upvote that claim. And if it's wrong, there you go.
But
it's not a perfect system.
Think about the Pam Bondi situation. I mean, I thought the Pam Bondi issue, where she and Trump were talking about taking away guns from citizens if they
what was it, if they committed a crime or something?
It was clinically basically shoved them in a hospital because they were mentally ill, and there was huge controversy of that. I thought the way the video was being presented, this was a few months ago, and so I was like, oh, this is a concern. And so I was writing a piece on it, and we were going to talk about it on the show today, and then I talk with you, and it's like, no, it's a 7-year-old video. Look it up. Sure enough, it's very long video.
It was right after the Las Vegas shooting. And they were talking about it in Florida because she was the AG at the time. But you can just tell. But I mean, I looked at it and I'm like, dude, Trump looks like I mean, he has aged horribly. He looks so much younger in that video. I'm like, yeah, this is not recent.
The worry with Pam Bondi still continues, though, and I think it was an interesting, like, they should have taken that as a jump-off point, because this is the whole issue with her confirmation, is that she was anti-Second Amendment. I mean, she's the reason red flag laws are heavily pushed.
Why didn't this video come up during her confirmation process? People just got on board with her. They never did any research. Like, if I was a Republican congressman genuinely having questions, I would have brought that up. Be like, hey, what's your opinion on red flag laws?
No idea why they didn't heavily. Maybe they did, and maybe I missed it. But that's kind of the issue, is that all this stuff is being missed. Because I looked up articles on it, and like they're like, Second Amendment people are nervous about Pam Bondi because X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, this was nowhere on my newsfeed.
Right.
And I'm on X,
and now
I'm
she's
on Ground
in.
News,
it's too late,
I'm on
man.
Smart News. Like, I look things, I genuinely try to look for as much news as possible. And this was nowhere.
Yeah, it's
it was being suppressed, so...
X is a great platform, but it's clear that there are some issues with, people posting old videos or just completely false stories and people sharing them and them spreading.
Their trending site is completely just like it. Like, since Elon has taken over, this is the one thing I hate about him since he's taken over. His trending site has completely just like, it's not helpful. It used to be that like, oh, these are the actual main news stories. I can count on one hand how many times I was like, oh, Pam Bondi video. Oh, the Eagles not wanting to come in. Like there was an actual list of being like, oh, these are like the top 5 stories of the day.
Yeah.
Rarely that is how that happens. Normally it's like, oh, this person died. And it's like, oh, okay, let's go in. And then like all the tweets are like, oh no, he actually didn't die. He's actually alive and it's fine. And it's just like people responding back and forth. That's the problem with the trending site, is that Twitter acts itself as a news company and it's seen as that in the App Store.
And also people in the comments don't ever fact check anything. Like when I look at that Pam Bondi story, I had to scroll like a decade to find anybody claiming this is an old video, because I knew for a fact it was old when I looked at it. I'm like, dude, everybody's just believing it blindly.
Community notes, if I was running community notes, what I would do is, because there are people on the site, like I do this, our friend Dimitri does this, where you go onto a site and you actually put on, like, here's the actual article, here's actually what's going on with this. And I don't know why those don't get propped up.
I remember him saying something that, like, basically outside links aren't, like, X doesn't like that for some reason.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that is, but that should change.
It's ridiculous, because outside links are the only way you're going to actually get genuine information.
Yeah,
I think it's
because I think the way they get around it is like they make the post, it gets popular, and then they put like a thread or a reply that has the link beneath. And that's really the only way they can do it. But nobody opens those links.
No, but here's the problem. At least that's okay. Like, I'll take that, right? Like, most of these people don't do that.
No.
Every single time I'm looking at a Republican source, none of them put those links on there.
It's a bullshit story, and they know that if they put a link, it's so provably false.
All they do is they say breaking, and like, I'm sorry, it takes me 5 minutes to research.
I love those.
I love
those because it's like breaking. It's a 7-year-old video. It's like, no, it's not breaking.
Yeah, it was breaking 7 years ago, but anyway, any final thoughts on today?
My final thought would be Marco Rubio is a concern to me. And he's always been a rhino his entire life. So you could make the argument that Pam Bondi is concerning, but opinions can change, clearly. And they're clearly there to fulfill the policies of the president, not their own. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. There is some concerns there. I hope she proves me wrong.
I guess my only quick pushback on that is I don't trust any of them.
As you shouldn't.
I have issues with Pete Hegseth.
There's a difference between giving them the benefit of the doubt and trusting them.
I've been giving Marco Rubio way more benefit of the doubt because of I've watched pretty much every interview he's done since then, and I'm like, okay, this is the guy I'm trusting you. I would still be concerned of him running for president.
I trust big balls. That's who I trust.
Anyhow, thanks for joining the American Mandate, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good one.